Now, in Chicago, I had been taught that if there are two different theories, there should be some empirical evidence in principle that could distinguish what would happen under one theory from what would happen under the other.
Right.
And so I wrestled with that for most of the summer. And one morning I came in and I said, I got it. What we need are data on the amount of sugarcane standing in the fields before the hurricane struck. And as I waited for the congratulations, I could see stricken looks around me in the room. Like, this guy has stumbled on something that will ruin us all. You know? And they said, well, we don't have those data. I said, oh, I'll bet the Department of Agriculture has it. He said, well, but that doesn't mean we have it. You'd have to have a request go up the chain of command to the Secretary of Labor. He would then confer with the Secretary of Agriculture. It would come down the chain of command in the Department of Agriculture to whoever has those numbers, and so on. I said, good. Well, they say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, so I will now submit my request to the Secretary of Labor, which I did. And I am still patiently awaiting this reply.
And the institutional fear of the number was what? That it would...
The U.S. Department of Labor administers the minimum wage law.
I see.
And the money and the careers of perhaps a third or some other significant percentage of the Labor Department's resources come from administering the minimum wage law. One of the real farces of all this is that the law itself, Section 4D, I still remember, requires the Labor Department to study the employment effects of minimum wages. And those studies are absolutely a farce. In fact, some years after I left, I did an article saying why those studies were a farce. And when I came back later on to the Labor Department to do some research, one of the older librarians who remembered me turned to the younger librarian and she said, this is the man who wrote that article that has everybody up in arms.
So you began to be dissuaded of Marxism.
And of government in general, because the government is not out there at the personification of the national interest.
Right.
They have their own interests, and the Labor Department was clearly an interest in keeping the minimum wage because that's their jobs and careers.
All right.
And power.
Which brings us, if I may, to one of my favorite books, your 2000 book. This is a beat-up old copy. Mm-hmm. This book, Conflict of Visions.
Yes.
Which you published in 2007, and you lay out. I'm sorry.
1987.
I beg your pardon, 1987.
Reprinted in 2007.
Well, beat up as this book is, it turns out this is the reprint, sorry. 1987.